Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Mike Fitzgerald. I'm the Assistant Director of the Department of the Air Resources Division, the Department of Environmental Services. We currently are the agency that runs the administrative side of the REGI program, which is a similar type program, a carbon pricing program. There are nuances between cap and trade and carbon pricing, but REGI does impose a price on electricity, and as was noted, this program recognizes that we're currently part of that program. The Department of Environmental Services provided the letter. We don't usually take a position on tax fee financial policies, and we are not taking a position on this legislation. I did want to provide some information to you, and as has been noted, carbon pricing is a significant area of discussion all across the country. Regionally, nationally, a number of states are in the infancy stages of considering it. I did provide you with a second page that is by no means comprehensive, but it does have a list of several actions that are going on in both federally and on the regional level. As was noted, several states in New England are considering similar policies that with differences in pricing and so on. So again, EPS takes no specific position, but as was noted, a number of leading economists do believe that carbon pricing is the most efficient way the most economically efficient way to deal with reducing carbon emissions. And one of the advantages of it from a very economic overview is that it has a tendency to replace command and control type programs, environmental requirements such as the Clean Power Plan at the federal level and so on. It is a pricing mechanism that sends a price signal, and that price signal tends to reduce emissions. The acid rain program was brought up. That's a cap and trade program. It's probably considered to be one of the most successful programs ever in addressing environmental problems in terms of reducing emissions that cause acid rain and we're destroying lakes, particularly here in the Northeast region. We've made tremendous progress over the last 20 years since price was put on the sulfur dioxide emissions. So that being said, our comment on this is that this type of program is best addressed on a regional or national level. I think one of the questions that was asked earlier about New Hampshire's contribution. For instance, REGI, one of the reasons that New Hampshire participated in REGI is that the original 10 REGI states represented the 7th largest economy in the world. And so that was a very significant way to address emissions and to work together such that each state had a responsibility and each state had a budget that they had to achieve, but was worked on a regional level, and so that provided a lot of economies of scale. New Hampshire represented about 5% of the emissions of those 10 states at the time, and so hence we only paid 5% of the costs, as opposed to having to run the entire program. So we are working in REGI. We are working through a program now called TCI, the Transportation Climate Initiative, which is similar to a program to the way REGI was developed. It took several years for the states to come together and determine how the program should work and implement it and so on. TCI is trying to address transportation emissions. For those of you not familiar, from the carbon standpoint, there are really 3 major sectors. One is electricity generation, one is transportation, all transportation, not just cars, but trucks, planes, rail, everything. Transportation is a significant source of emissions, and buildings, heating and cooling buildings. And so those are the three sectors that we generally are, in general, considered a third. But you know, some are. Electricity has come down significantly as a result of A, the RGGI program, and B, the transition to natural gas-fired electricity production in the region over the past several years, nationally, not just in the region. So there is a lot of information on carbon pricing out there. We'd be happy to assist and provide information. I do want to address a couple of quick points. We did in the fiscal note that we supplied to the Legislative Budget Office, we did note that we felt we would need at least 2 or 3 FTEs. That would somehow be not bring it into the fiscal note here. DRA, I think, indicated that they would need additional positions. As well, the bill does provide for up to 5% of the funds to be used for administrative costs, so that would certainly cover it. We did the calculations on the costs. For those of you who aren't familiar, when you do a fiscal note, unfortunately, we get 2 or 3 days to tackle some very complex policy questions and do some calculations and get that back across the river here. So we just looked at carbon emissions in New Hampshire. There are, we use a number of about 50 million tons of carbon. That number comes from EIA. There are some that are not, you know, there's some overlapping in that. We didn't have a chance to really carefully analyze, but we did come up with this number of roughly, you know, 800 million in the 4th year. And that number, if carbon emissions were, if we were off by, you know, 20%, that number would change by a couple of $100 million, but million here, million there. So that's a number that we would say is a, you know, a very cursory estimate, and we had to address that. As far as the per ton cost, there was a question on that. EPA today currently uses a cost of $36 per ton as the social cost of carbon. There are a wide variety of estimates. Some claim that that's extremely low, it should be 50 or 60. Some believe it's 10 or 20, but it does give a range. California currently is implementing an economy-wide carbon pricing program that is cap and trade. Again, the difference is cap and trade sets a cap, and then the value of the per ton fee is set by, you know, whether that cap is met or not. And so that California's program is currently at about $13 a ton on the entire economy. Some of the legislation in states around New Hampshire seems to be, in terms of order of magnitude, fairly close to what is proposed in this legislation. So again, I think that covers all my key points. We would be happy to assist in any way, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Yes, I have 2 questions, if I may, Chairman. When did you said you may need 2 to 3 full-time equivalents?
Yes.
When? Do you need them now, or do you need them when the roads come in, or when?
Well, the bill, as I understand it, takes effect a year after it's passed. We would need we'd need some staffing up front to do rulemaking and so on. That we'd have to you know, adjust our budget and something like that.
Second question, if I may. This bill has fee going from $20 in 2020 up to $53 in 2023. How high would it have to get before it has any measurable impact on behavior?
Oh, I think it would have an immediate impact. It would, you would start to see a lot of a lot of entities looking at it. You know, I mean, there was mention, I believe the sponsor mentioned the price was about 10 cents a gallon. We actually did some rough calculations, and I'm not sure where the differential lies. We have to talk, but I think it would, our calculations would be roughly about 15 to 20 cents per gallon addition to the cost of gasoline or heating oil.
The first year?
Yes, and by about 5 cents a year. So you know, you saw a few years ago when the price of gasoline went to $4. There was an immediate impact. Couple of things happened. First of all, and I'm not advocating that, by the way, but you know, we saw gasoline consumption drop dramatically in that time frame, and we also saw car sales change dramatically from, you know, very heavy, you know, SUV type vehicles to much bigger preference for smaller, more economical type vehicles. So the impacts come in pretty. That's one of the reasons that economists like carbon pricing, is because it gives a direct signal. It gives people who can make emissions reductions incentive to make those reductions, and then others can buy them from them or whatever. So that, you know, if it doesn't make sense for your company to reduce, but somebody else can reduce for 5 cents, I mean $5 a ton, you can buy at $7 a ton from them, and that's how the acid rain program worked. Some those that could make emissions reductions made them; others that couldn't, or it wasn't economical for them, they made those. But again, I would caution: the acid rain program was a national program. We certainly think that this type of thing. You know, I believe the sponsor mentioned that, you know, work in states around us. And that's how it works. 10 states put together and put together a program. So I think it would be more effective than on a regional basis.
Okay. Could I clarify something? Explain the difference in the numbers that they presented.
I'm totally confused. What I want to know.
I've achieved my objective.
How will this affect me? Gas, 10 cents a gallon more. So I probably use 50 gallons a week because I'm coming back and forth here. That's another $5. On my heating at home, there's going to be a surcharge if I heat with oil. Is that the way it works?
It would be I assume that it would be passed on. This would be a fee.
Per gallon.
Generally, the way these programs work, I don't use the term prime suppliers. Prime suppliers are those who bring petroleum products and fuel across state lines as opposed to local distributors. So generally, this type of fee is imposed at prime supplier level, which is the simplest. So a spray in Portsmouth or you know, other Irving's, Global, etc., that bring product into New Hampshire, the most efficient way would be to charge at that point where it comes into New Hampshire, and then that's passed on to consumers.
Okay, the follow-up to that is, a lot of these programs, and we're saying that this is for the low income. Many low income people, myself included, don't have extra expendable cash. So this is going to hurt up front the people that you want to help most because of the outlay. You have to put this out, you know, in order to get, I think it was a cash for clunkers, but you have to put out the money before you get it back. And a lot of people do not have that upfront money, and as it's stretched out over the week, it's just inching out of the budget. So that's something, you know, I don't understand.
Well, I mean, one thing that we were not involved in the drafting of the legislation, but I do. The legislation says 20% shall be distributed to programs that primarily benefit low income. 70% shall be used to provide rebates to all state residents. So the vast majority of this, so nearly 3/4, would be rebated to everyone on an individual basis, on a per capita basis, as I understand it. And only 20% of it would be used in those programs that are intended to benefit low income. That's still a very substantial amount, but I just wanted to clarify that that's the way it's apportioned. So you would receive a substantial, as I understand it, as this bill is written, you would receive a substantial check based on dividing between 70% of the money that's brought in and rebating it to you.
That, in my mind, doesn't help the person who has to front the cost. It's like, I can only think of an example where I had to buy medicine. I didn't have the money to pay up front. Insurance would reimburse me, but it was the upfront that hurts people. So that doesn't take care of the upfront, because you have to start somewhere. And I would imagine, and I'm guessing, and I'll ask you, these rebates don't come back monthly or weekly. They probably come back annually or semi-annually.
Oh, it's a government program, so I'm sure it'll be extremely efficient.
Okay.
Speaking on behalf of the ERA, no, something else. It would be an upfront cost. I don't know if the bill. I don't think the bill specifies. The time does specify quarterly. Okay. So, and I will point out that that's exactly what's happening with the REGI program right now. Most of the REGI program money that's coming in next year is rebated, and it's paid when you pay your electricity bill. You're paying your REGI cost in that electricity bill, and it's part of the wholesale cost of power, just like fuel and everything else. And then it's rebated to you through the Public Utilities Commission through your rate case, and your rates are reduced to account for the REGI rebate money that goes to you. So the magnitude is significantly different, obviously.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for taking my question. Just curious, since you seem to have knowledge of past other states that are doing this program, and since the program itself would have a debilitating effect on gas prices, just curious, will there be a mechanism where people that are currently reimbursed for gas for their business expenses at a current national percent back, will that be increased to compensate them for the upfront cost?
Are you talking about mileage reimbursement? Yeah. Except for the legislature. Mileage reimbursement is based on fuel costs. So if your fuel cost is increased, the mileage reimbursement rate set by the IRS, I would assume would account for that.
Mr. Fitzgerald, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned the sulfur dioxide trading program that was very successful. Isn't it true that, as I understood how that worked initially, that when the price was initially put into place for those sulfur dioxide allowances that were required, the market mechanism that takes the hold at that point is that people try to figure out how they can achieve the same goal of reducing sulfur dioxide allowances by cheaper means. So at first, the price for reducing these things was to try to reduce it instead of paying for the allowances. Before you knew it, the price of the allowances was going down, actually, because people were all shifting to mitigation instead of buying the allowances. So I think it's not a good idea to think of these pricing tools as being static. They're actually dynamic. The minute you put them into place, like you mentioned with the gas increases, behavior changes.
Absolutely.
And in fact, what you can also do is you can change your behavior, make sure you don't get penalized, but you're going to get money back. So isn't that the way this thing works?
As I said, economists look on carbon pricing as the most economically efficient. I'm not suggesting that it makes sense for across the board, but economists think it's extremely economically efficient because it gives you an immediate price signal, and there are immediate responses to it. And as I say, these responses are generally the most efficient response because those who can lower emissions at a lower per ton cost do so. Those who can't, then I use the example. I'll try to clarify. Might be somebody who can reduce emissions for $5 a ton. You're charging $10 a ton. So some company might look and say, the way I can reduce emissions would cost me $15 a ton. I'll buy some emissions reductions from the guy that can do it for $5. I'll pay him $7. I'm still making $8. Not making, but I'm still saving $8 in reduced cost. Okay, and so you're getting your emissions reductions the most bang for the buck. It's very economically efficient. That doesn't mean that it's perfect, but that's the theory.
Thank you. Just for clarification, what you just described was a cap and trade system. What we're talking about here is just plain carbon tax.
Well, my point is that they both put a price. One gets its price signal by setting the cap. One sets a price signal, and that results in certain deductions. They're just.
I guess what I was trying to say is that
Yeah,
there's no selling.
I did try to recognize the difference between cap and trade and yes. So.
Now, you talked about this quite a bit, how we can get regionally and national and so forth. Well, I understand what we're talking about here is a worldwide issue of climate change. It's not limited to England or the United States. So I'm trying to look at this bill and what it's actually going to accomplish, other than allow people to say, I'm from New Hampshire, we're good at cutting carbon. As far as the impact of global climate change on this bill, 10 years from now, if it passes and goes into effect, will there be a measurable decrease in what the temperature of the world otherwise would affect?
As a result of this single legislation?
Yes.
I would say no. As a result of legislation
Hundreds
like
of bills
this
across the world.
around the world and so on. And I would say that was, I believe you were ended up being involved when Reggie came out and we were in discussions and, it's New Hampshire going to be, well, New Hampshire's going to be very little, but again, when you start to put a tax, a market-based mechanism onto the 7th largest economy in the world, then you start talking, reducing emissions on a significant basis. But that also assumes that other countries will be, wouldn't be a fair.
Until that happens in the short term,
Yeah.
what this does is simply transfer huge amounts of money from the private economy to the state without having any noticeable effect on it.
I will note that New Hampshire in 2009 did publish a climate change plan that was the result of a very bipartisan commission that was set up, and they certainly recognized and recommended that New Hampshire adopt goals that, most of the states in the region have goals of reducing emissions by 70 to 80%, somewhere in there, by 2050. Some Massachusetts has legislation. Ours is purely a voluntary goal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You mentioned that this could possibly, right off the bat, cost the average person that's commuting back and forth to work 15 to 20 cents per gallon. Right? That's for my town in Derry, where people work in Boston because it pays better. Right? That's a huge thing. I mean, you're talking adding extra money to their bill, to their commuting cost, which means they make less. And I read this on this bill, and it says electricity on line number 8, right? It says gas or electricity, whatever's made with either gas or electricity. So
Which page do you want?
First page. Well, the first page of the bill.
Okay.
Line 8.
Yeah.
It says gas or electricity produced from such fuels, right? Now, so for instance, if I work for a company that makes plastic bottles, are they going to get double taxed? Because the plastic they're using, they're creating a carbon product or something that could possibly be a carbon product?
They would be taxed on the their use of fuel.
Just on the electricity, not on the, or the gas, or whatever they use.
Right. Now, the plastic that they make, which may be made from petrochemicals, if it's made in Texas or somewhere else, or whatever, I don't believe that would be subject to this, as I read it right now, but I can't say.
Follow? Yep. On line number 28, it says, every applicable entity shall pay.
Every applicable,
Yeah.
yes. Applicable entities, I believe, is a defined term. Go back to line 6 on page 1.
Okay. And the carbon exclusion. You have to be selling the carbon.
It's a vendor, and I, as I say, my recommendation, if this were to be considered further, would be that, certainly that we looked at from with a standpoint of working at the highest level of the distributor, current supplier level, not trying to collect, 15 cents from every mom and pop gas station in the city. It would be, it would be a fee that we charge as when the product comes into the city.
Just wanted to clarify the difference between my 9 cent and your 15 to 18 cent. I misspoke. The 9 cents is per 10 cent increase. So it would be 18 and with the $20, and then it would be 9 more cents when it was $30.
Okay.
That's
So
my
we're fairly
feeling.
consistent.
I misspoke. Thank you.
If you're going to pass a cost onto a distributor, then that cost is going to be passed on to the consumer.
Absolutely.
Is there a control on how much that cost is? Say it's 9 cents. Now, the distributor is going to say, well, I have to administrate this because I have to pull that out. So can he make that 20 cents? I mean, we have
Well, I
no,
think we, but I mean, you're
but
talking
you have
about,
no assurance of what it's going to
you're
suggest.
talking about gasoline and oil products, which are pretty competitive in price, and if somebody were to impose at a distributor upon, a 10% administrative fee or something, I see people circling gas stations here for 2 cents a gallon. I think, I don't see people trying to add a tremendous amount of administrative cost, or that administrative cost would be pretty competitive across the affected entities.
A restatement, I think, of the same question. A lot of businesses, don't they add margins? I get it for $1, so I want to sell it for $1.30 or something.
Yeah.
So would this increase the margin? I mean, the base is higher, so the margin, so what was 20 cents, what was $20 going to become $24, and then so on.
Well, be cognizant that you already have a gasoline tax here in the state, and you also pay, there's a hazardous waste cleanup cost associated with the price of oil. There's already mechanisms to collect money at this level and to, so I don't think that this would be a tremendous administrative change. The gas tax has to be collected and paid to the state of New Hampshire. So this would basically just change that number.
Thank you. Mr. Fitzgerald, I the appropriate person to ask this, to answer this question, just say that. In looking at the bill at the very beginning, on line 6, it talks about what an applicable entity is. It says the vendor of carbon-based fuel at the first point of sale within the state.
Yep.
And it goes on to say carbon-based fuel means coal, petroleum product, natural gas, or electricity produced by those fuels. So let me give you a scenario and tell me what happens. The natural gas comes into the state of New Hampshire, probably the state we don't have it produced here, except in extreme circumstances. It comes in on a pipeline, and the first point of sale is going to be, let's say, to a combined cycle gas plant in New Hampshire. So I'm assuming they would be an applicable entity that would then have to pay this fee. So then they produce electricity, and now the first point of sale for that electricity within the state is from that combined cycle gas to an electric supplier within the state, do they then have to also pay the fee?
I don't know.
Being paid twice?
I don't know the intent, but it certainly would make sense to me that you would carve that out somehow, so such that you pay one fee based on the amount of carbon that you use. And so I assume that would, if it's not clear, it would need to be clarified. I think it's a point well taken.
Thank you.
Okay. Sure. Just because we heard before that we would have such a small place that even if we did all these things, we wouldn't have a worldwide impact. As somebody representing DES, wouldn't you agree, however, that when we make local changes like this, we'll have a local impact on the air quality in the country?
Oh, any reduction in the amount of gasoline or oil burn, has a significant, would have a significant effect. As I say, building heat, transportation, and electricity generation are your large, the big three. If you reduce the amount of energy or fuel that is used, you reduce not only emissions of carbon, but also emissions. There are co-benefits of emissions of NOx, SO2, other pollutants, PM, etc.
Would you also agree that a program like this would also spur a lot of technological improvements, possibly new jobs, to follow up with the market signals that we would be given?
Generally, the result of these types of programs is that, that's the whole theory, is that you harness market innovation, and those people that, the smart people that can make reductions and do them cost effectively benefit, and they create, and create jobs, etc. I think there's certainly potential for economic benefits, both benefits and costs and economic changes. I always think it's important to recognize that there's not just costs, there are benefits. Some of the things you just mentioned, there's significant co-benefits in reduced asthma, reduced work time loss, those sorts of things from these types. It's pretty easy to always just look at the cost, but we try to point out that there are some balancing factors here. And again, the fact that most of this money would be rebated to consumers would be a very mitigating piece of the puzzle from an economic impact.
Thank you.
Again, just a clarification from Representative Harrington's question about the combined heat and power. They were using Liberty as their distributor, so Liberty would pay the fee, and then Liberty would allocate.
I'm sorry, you didn't get my question.
Let's not head back and forth between members of the committee, please. There are quite a few people who want to testify, and let's concentrate on getting their testimony and asking them questions and elicit useful information. Thank you very much, and Mr. Fitzgerald, for being here.
Thank you.